Support for this podcast comes from the Utah Office of Tourism, announcing the Four Corners School's Canyon Country Discovery Center, offering hands-on exhibits, educational tours, and a variety of field-based hiking and rafting adventures. From day trips to week-long adventures throughout the Colorado Plateau. Nearby attractions include Canyonlands National Park, Hovenweep National Monument, Natural Bridges National Monument, Monument Valley Tribal Park, and Cedar Mesa. FourCornersSchool.org.
Blog Talk Radio.
To an astounding future that lies ahead, one that will be here sooner than you think, and one that you have an important role to play in bringing about. At the World Transformed, we want to introduce you to what may be the greatest transformation of them all, the one that begins with considering and acting on the almost limitless possibilities that lie ahead, and that ends somewhere beyond the reach of the human imagination. So, when does that amazing future begin? Well, today is the day. My name is Phil Bowermaster, and with me in the virtual studio is my co-blogger, co-futurist and co-host, Stephen Gordon.
Hey, Phil, how are you doing, man?
Well, I'm super fantastic. How are you?
Man, doing great. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
I almost threw in, total inside joke just between the two of us, I almost threw in, co-blogger, co-futurist, co-host, and associate pastor, Stephen Gordon. But,
total inside joke.
That's going to have to be lost on everyone else. So that's
everybody else. But it's funny to you and me, and that's the main thing, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
Man, how was your Thanksgiving? You have a good one?
Beautiful. Had a very nice Thanksgiving. Got together with family, did all the stuff. It was just a real nice kind of 4 days off work. Really, it was a good little slice of life. How about you? It looks like you took the whole week off, huh? Did some traveling.
I did. It was it was one of those summers where it just was not possible for me to take any time off. So it was the first chance I'd had to take a break at all, and so I took the week, and we went up to Branson, Missouri, and had a great time. That was fun for the family. We joined my brother and his family, one of my brothers and his family, and my dad and mom, and just enjoy, just had a good time. That was kind of neat. A little different. We had never done like a extended family vacation away kind of thing before. That was a first for us. So, and it was great.
Very nice. How's Branson this time of year? Was it cold? Was it okay?
No. Well, for me, yes. For you, Phil, not so much. You would have been short sleeves and shorts, I'll bet. But being from Louisiana, we just had to bundle up a little bit. But mainly it was the wind. It wasn't the actual temperature. It was nice. It was nice. We had a good time both outdoors and just the shows are great up there, and we got to see about 3 or 4 shows, and
nice.
and of course the hills are nice. You get out there and woods and everything. It's just great. We had a good time.
All right. Well, pretty country up there. Well, it's good that you mentioned Thanksgiving because that's sort of what encroached on our show. The reason we're doing this in December instead of the third week in November when we were originally scheduled to have this program was I just got very busy the day we were supposed to do this show, and there was no time left. We were bumping into Thanksgiving week at that point, so we had to put it off a week, but that's fine because this was kind of a big show. We do a lot of these marking the time shows anymore, it seems, but I think it's worth doing. And it was almost exactly 2 years ago today, almost exactly, that we brought an end to the to the program known as FastForward Radio and started a show called The World Transformed. It's still pretty much the same show, but we were able to kind of leverage our intellectual property a little.
Yeah.
Talk about that. What would you say the change in emphasis was between the two?
Well, the FastForward Radio was always, kind of it was the speculist blog in podcast form. It was our we look at future topics and things that excited us about the future, and we'd that was what we dwelled on in that program, and it was and that's still a huge part of the World Transformed. But with the World Transformed, we're actually looking at ways that people can get involved themselves and in transforming the world, being a part of it. And so it's a slight change in emphasis, and so and that I got to credit you, Phil, with that. That's entirely your thought as to where we should go with the program, and I think I think it's a good change in emphasis. I've enjoyed it.
Well, the word speculist, for folks who don't know, is not a word we made up. The word speculist actually means observer. And I picked that URL all those years ago because I believed then and still believe that we are observers. We're witnesses of an amazing era in history. And I thought it was an appropriate name, and I thought it was an appropriate role to have, to be observers, to be witnesses to it. But yeah, we wanted to shift gears a little bit and become something beyond just observers, to become advocates of the future. Not just, hey, look at this awesome future that's coming, but hey, look at this awesome future that we can make. Look at this awesome future that I can make, that you can make. And that was that was kind of the drive behind the change. That and the fact that we own worldtransform.com, which was kind of nice. There was no getting a hold of fastforwardradio.com, so that wasn't going to happen. I guess to really be true to that idea, we should call it something like "Go Transform the World" or something like that. But I think we get the idea across. Hopefully we do. But what I thought we would do tonight is let's just review. Let's talk about what we've done over the past couple of years and see if, how have we been doing on that charter we gave ourselves to become agents, I guess, of the transformation of the world. So I've put together a list of they're just titles of shows we've done. Okay, so we've done 100 obviously over the last 2 years. And I've got we won't get to all these, but I've got about 22 that just caught my eye for one reason or another. And I know in the show description on worldtransform.com and at Blog Talk Radio, I said we'll talk about the topics that were of interest over the last 2 years, the ones that we think need to be revisited, and the new topics coming into the future, things that we haven't talked about before that we will. I will leave some time at the end, Stephen. So you've got a full almost hour to think about this. If you can think of a completely net new topic, right, that we've never talked about, but that will become relevant, I'd love it, because I racked my brain. I was like, well, yeah, I think we'll revisit this. I think we'll revisit this. But it's almost like we've covered so many big future topics. I'm having a hard time thinking of what are the ones we haven't ever talked about. So, not to suggest for a moment that we've covered them all, right? I'm not going to make Lord Kelvin's mistake and say everything that's been discovered has been discovered, or that every future scenario has. I know we haven't, but I don't know what the net new ones are. So we'll leave a minute or two at the end, time permitting, or shout one out at any time, because I'm just here officially to tell you that I got nothing. Okay, I couldn't come up with any.
Well, you know what? Hey, I will shout out these things as if I have Tourette's as we're going through the show, but we're going to depend entirely on your list from the past couple of years, Phil. So I'll be leaning on you in that way, and I'll be throwing out the possible future topics. So that it works. That's why this partnership is so great. So
that's what it's all about, right there. Absolutely. Okay. So I'm not going to do these in any particular order. I'm just going to grab topics. This one was actually from this year. We did a show called Internet of Things, or world made out of data? And in fact, I've been blogging about this topic quite a bit. There's an interesting convergence lately between my day job work and speculist work. You might remember, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I wrote a post at the Speculist about the fact that everybody's becoming a futurist. Not only are the futurists making these wild predictions about the future, but you see people just in technology roles in major companies or people in kind of visionary roles in technology companies, or whoever they might be. They're starting to say things about the future that sound crazier than the things you hear from people like Ray Kurzweil. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you say Ray Kurzweil. Well, Ray Kurzweil actually he was the crazy futurist at one point. I say that lovingly. He's a hero, you know.
Absolutely.
But now that he's actually been brought in-house into Google and given that role, because I mean, it's not so crazy anymore. I mean,
right.
You know, that's he's the perfect example in reverse, really. So.
He is. I mean, well, it just goes to show that those two things are converging. That the business world and the way out there futurist world are combining. And when I say the business world, I should say, you know, the world. But it seems to be more so in the world of business, particularly in the technology industry, that you hear people talking about these things than you do in, say, other parts of the public sector. You don't hear it in government much, in politics. It's made its way into entertainment, which is good. But where I've really seen the convergence is in that place. So yeah, day job wise, I'm an independent consultant and analyst talking about business intelligence and data warehousing and databases and all this great stuff in this industry I've worked in for years. And increasingly, I find that topics that I'm writing about related to that sound an awful lot like things that I used to write about for The Speculist, or still talk about to this day on this program. And this is a really good example of this. The Internet of Things is, as we discussed, just this process by which physical objects are becoming hooked into the Internet. You know, a lot of it has to do with sensors being attached to items out in the world. You've got smart homes, you've got thermostats and other sensors in the home that are all feeding signals back to central databases, security systems doing the same thing. You got warehouses now with every box has got telemetry. Well, we've talked about the amazing Amazon warehouse, right? That's the Internet of Things in action.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
It's like every item in there has a network address. It's addressable, it's findable, and it's sending out data, and it's talking, if not to every other object in there, at least to the brain of the operation, and every part of that warehouse in some sense is aware of everything else that's going on in there. It's this.
Well, I pointed out to you once, Phil, the soap.com warehouse video. It's on YouTube. Just go on YouTube and type in soap.com warehouse. And I mean, there's robots just it looks like an elaborate dance, because every robot's going in every different direction in its own direction, managing not to hit each other. And these robots are nothing but shells. Okay, they're shells full of stuff, and they're all bound for different places because somebody in Duluth wanted a bar of soap, so the shelf with that on it is going to the Duluth, drop off there within the warehouse. It's an amazing thing. I've never, the video's a year or so old, and it amazes me still. It's and I highly recommend our listeners check that out if they haven't already. Yeah, and to think that video, what you're seeing there is some kind of odd, quirky one-off, would really be to have the wrong idea, because what you're looking at is not only the future, it's the very near future, really, of everything. Sensors have become so cheap to produce, and it is so easy now to wire things up that we're increasingly living in a world that is connected to the Internet, a physical world
that's connected to the internet. But the other side of this
do we have
is
time for me to
that,
give a quick example?
Yeah, go.
Do we have time for a quick example?
Yeah.
Skybell is an early Internet of Things product that's coming out. It's a doorbell replacement. Now, what could be simpler than a doorbell, right? This doorbell replacement has a camera on it, and so when someone rings your doorbell, a picture of who's at your door comes to your smartphone, whether you are at home or 1,000 miles away, and you can talk to them.
Wow.
And so, I mean, they also building in future versions, they intend to build in facial recognition, the ability to open the door for someone if it's like someone that needs to come in the house for some reason. You have that ability, it takes the video so that if you need to play back the video later for some reason, it's there. Motion sensing so that even if someone doesn't ring the doorbell, it still works. It's a remarkable little product, and none of that is really, none of the technology that goes into it is all that, amazing. I mean, we but you put it all together, and it gives some amazing capability to people. Again, it's the idea that your particular physical location seems to matter less and less for more and more reasons. You can be anywhere you want to be and still be able to do whatever it is you need to do. And the
reason the physical location matters less is because the internet has extended out into the physical world, right? And the internet operates at the speed of light. So
your physical location is now expanded beyond your body. You have,
right.
In some ways, you have ways of touching the physical world, far beyond your normal reach, that your physical body has. And so, in some ways, there's robotics involved. There's, of course, the internet involved. It's just there's some very simple things like that just are, transforming the world. And
but the amazing thing is that the Internet of Things is just half of the equation, because the other half of the equation is the world made out of data, right? This is the thing that is so that makes this so pervasive, so overwhelming, is that this is occurring, that the Internet is spreading out into the actual world. At the same time, so much of the actual world is kind of being subsumed into the world of data. And this is,
right.
The example we give there is how the smartphone, one tiny device, contains all these devices that you used to have, right? So many processes, so many pieces of equipment, so much capability that used to be parsed out into separate spaces, into separate physical objects, is now all subsumed into one very elegant little piece of equipment, because the primary value component of all those different pieces was the data. And so we've retained the data portion of it, and we're able to get the same value proposition, actually a much greater value proposition in almost every case, for each of those devices, but with just one device, and data picking up the slack. So there's this real acceleration of the internet racing out into the real world, and the real world racing into the cyber world at the same time. Who's going to win, or where are we going to end up? This is definitely a topic that we will continue to revisit throughout 2015 and as long as we're doing this show. I think this is something that we're going to see only more visibly, and we're going to become only more aware of. I think this is something that is just sort of dawning on, standard media people. It's just sort of occurring to people in the business world, and it speaks to a level of change unlike really anything I can think of that's ever occurred, and it's speeding up. So I think we're going to see some more opportunities to talk about this in the near future.
Another future topic is privacy and why we will willingly give it up as we go forward into the future. And the reason we will give it up is if services are able to do better for us because they know more about us. If Amazon, if Google or whatever knows us even better than we know ourselves, it can, we'll be able to do things that those who do not willingly give up their privacy can't do. Now, the issue obviously is balancing that and being smart about what kind of privacy you give up, and that's going to be the balancing act that's going to, I think, consume us over, and when I say us, I mean like the entire world over the next century. I mean, that's how do we give up? What do we give up in order to to have power within this digital world? And what do we keep? And and when do we get? What portions of our lives do we keep entirely to ourselves? And how do we manage to even do that?
How do you make that happen? Yeah.
And
exactly. What do you lose every time you keep something completely to yourself? Right.
Exactly. When Amazon doesn't know that you happen to like this, you have this particular preference, then what it suggests to you are what Google may suggest to you as a search result might be just slightly not as good as it would have been otherwise. So
right.
I think that's something that we'll talk a lot about. I think, and we haven't really talked a lot about it in the past.
We haven't. I think you're right. I think that issue becomes more important. Yeah. No, it's come up, but I don't think we've ever done a whole show on it.
Yeah, and it's something that I think will be a huge deal going forward in the future. So.
Okay, before we leave this one altogether, and we've got to hit a few others, but before we leave this one altogether, I just want to say that Glenn Reynolds, either yesterday or today, had the definitive last word on the Internet of Things. He was talking about he was just hawking some toothbrush for Amazon, and he mentions that it's Bluetooth activated, and he said, "I don't know how I've gotten by all these years without a Bluetooth toothbrush." That's exactly how we're all going to be pretty soon. We're going to look back on a time when everyday objects weren't wired in somehow and think, how in the world did we ever survive in that kind of world? Okay, let's shift gears completely here. How about we did a show called The Other 99%. Stephen, do you remember what that show was about?
The other 99%.
Yes.
Remind me. It'll come back to me as soon as you say.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with the 1% or the 99%. That's why it's the other 99%. It was taken from a quote, and now it's even slipped my mind who it was that said it, but somebody knowledgeable, that we really have only learned about 1% of everything we're likely to learn as a species. At best, we've learned about 1% of what we're likely to learn. So we talked a little bit about, gosh, what could be in that other 99% of knowledge that humanity hasn't even begun to achieve yet. That, to me, that idea, not so much the specifics, because it's in the same way it's hard to imagine the world beyond the singularity, and it's hard to imagine topics that we haven't thought of yet that we're going to be talking about. It's hard to imagine knowledge that we just have no precedent for and haven't discovered yet. But the percentage really helps you clarify your thinking about who and what we are, right? It's not to say that we're dumb or weak or, sad or, any of those terms that somebody might apply to us, only knowing 1% of what we're eventually going to learn. I think it's probably just a tiny fraction of 1%, actually, of what we'll eventually learn. It just is a reminder that we don't know all that much, that as far as we've come and as much as we've learned, there is this vast amount of knowledge yet to be acquired. And I think there should be something a little bit humbling about that should put us in a position where we say, okay, well, let's not get too carried away with anything right now then, right? Since at best we're only looking at 1% of the picture. What do you think?
Well, I agree. There was a time, and it wasn't all that long ago, Phil, that the geniuses of, say, the of our founding fathers, and really that was probably the two biggest ones were Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin. Those guys could be experts in just about every field of intellectual endeavor that was available. It was possible to kind of read and know and have a good grasp of the state of the art of everything at that point.
Yeah. You could really be a know-it-all back in those days.
Yeah, and Benjamin Franklin was, and Thomas Jefferson was, and that's just not possible anymore. It's
right.
There's just too, even right now, I would feel myself pretty smart if I knew 1% of things that were available to be known right now, and I don't believe that I do. I don't believe I've got 1% of everything available to be known right now. And so, looking forward, I mean, it's that is the situation going to get less complex or more? It's going to get more complex. And so, yeah, it's as a species, I think it's easy to say that as a species, obviously someone has a grasp of most everything, right? You got your little piece of the world, Mike. You know what I'm saying. So as a species, we have it all. But looking forward, 99% of what we will do as a species has yet to be done. I believe that's a underestimation of how big the future is in front of us. I think it's a lot bigger than that. And
I think if you say 1%, though, if people begin to take in 1%, if they begin to at least accept that idea, at least that moves you in the right direction. Because I think we tend to think it's the other way around. We tend to think, well, we know just about everything there is to know. We're just kind of filling in details now, and all the big things that are to be accomplished have pretty much been accomplished. We're just, we're kind of tucking in the corners now, and it's just the opposite. The opposite of that is true. That really, it's all out there. And I think we talked on the show we did about this. We talked about the fact that we're only just now coming to terms with the fact that most of the stuff in the universe is stuff we have no idea what it is, right? We got dark matter and dark energy. We don't know what that stuff is. So most of what we're even able to sort of detect and theorize, we don't even know what it is. We don't know what, if anything, is beyond the universe. But theoretically, there's an infinite expanse of other stuff outside of the universe, and we see the part of it that we see, and we don't see the rest of it. So, those are bracing enough, but probably just within the context of our own, even within the solar system, even on this planet, there's probably so much more to be learned that we just have no idea yet. We're not even asking the right questions yet before we can start figuring some of this stuff out. And it's intimidating, it's humbling, but it's also, I think, very exciting that we've got all that learning to look forward to, because there's got to be some amazing stuff to be discovered out there. All right, see, now that's better. That's the way we deal with these topics. Now, at that rate, we won't get through 22 of them, but we might handle 5. Yeah. By the way, you still haven't shouted out any net new ideas, but I'm sure you're just being modest.
Oh, yeah, I'm pacing myself. I shot out the doorbell thing, and let me just shout this out while I'm at it. How about Animal Uplift? Animal Uplift is something that we've mentioned in passing in a couple of shows, and the reason I bring that up is the story came out this week. The smart mouse with the half-human brain.
Oh my gosh!
They've given they wanted to be able to test certain drugs, that involve human brains with mice, and so they gave mice some of the neurons, are basically allowed the human type neurons to take over within these mice, and of course they still act like mice. Their brains are still structurally the same, but they're much more efficient brains. They work in ways that the signals move more quickly, and these are much smarter mice now than regular mice, and so that was in New Scientist this week, and it's a pretty amazing story. And so we've talked about in the past Animal Uplift, and the some of the huge ethical issues involved in things like that. At what point do you cease being able to, for example, experiment on mice? Because now you're dealing with a little person there. Right. And so that's some of the issues involved there. They, the same group that did this with the mice considered doing it with chimpanzees and decided against it for that very reason.
Yeah. Well, it's a daunting possibility. It's one thing to talk about. Hey, maybe someday we'll uplift a species and make it human equivalent intelligence, and it gets to join us on this adventure. But when you're faced with the possibility of doing it,
right?
Because probably they could do it with chimps, right? I mean, they're almost there anyway, so it wouldn't take much of a nudge to get chimps into our corner. It's like, well, great. Now what? Now what happens to the 15 human-level intelligent chimpanzees in this world full of humans? Huge ethical
what is
issues.
Their place? Yeah,
legal issues, all kinds of stuff that has to be ironed out there. So I can see where they'd be intimidated by that. But that takes me to another one of our topic shows. We did a show about a year ago called "Making Big Things Happen," and we kind of divided that between two ideas. One was the big things that individuals can make happen now, which individual people can do much bigger things than they used to be able to. The example being the guy who makes a movie on his smartphone and it gets an Oscar nomination, right? It's amazing what an individual can do. But then there's also kind of the species level or the societal level, civilization level, big things that we've talked about making happen. Animal uplift is actually one of those. Other ones are interstellar exploration, or even bigger projects like geoengineering or solar engineering, building a dome, or what is that thing called, the Dyson sphere around the sun. Some of those those massive major engineering projects. There's this school of thought, this argument that says that we've slowed down as a society, that we used to take on the big projects, and we were heading in the direction of Dyson spheres, and now we've veered off from that, and we're not moving ahead in big strides anymore. We're not making big things happen anymore, which I disagree with. I think we've actually, if we've stepped away from making big things happen, it's because we're laying down more infrastructure that's going to make it possible for us to do bigger things. But the other thing that's happened is there's been a huge handoff between society making big things happen, which was, I'll grant you, was happening in a more dramatic and visible way a few decades ago, over the 20th century. Big handoff between that and the other kind of making big things happen, which is this amazing individual ability to make big things happen. And on the show we had an inventor and we had a filmmaker, right? It was just more or less regular people who made some big stuff happen in their own life. And I think that
these are people that are obviously very smart people, but not all that different from the people that you and I know in our personal lives, Phil. It's just these guys just refuse to leave it to they ought to do something. When normal people talk, they say, you know what? No, you're exactly right. They ought to do something about that. Well, these people are the they. They decided that they were going to be the they, and they got out and did some stuff. So,
Absolutely. And increasingly, more of us are deciding that we can be they and finding that the resources are there, that the capability exists to do things that previously we just didn't have. That you couldn't just decide. I mean, a person could say, well, I'm going to make a feature film, but for an individual to pull that off would still take a good deal of money and time, and not to say that it doesn't take all that now, but the odds were really stacked against you a decade or two ago. And today, anybody who wants to make a feature-length film, I think anybody who wants to do it can do it. I would say, it's kind of like anybody who wants to have a radio show can have one, right? It's kind of the
exactly
the age we live in.
Individuals can succeed and do things that were only possible for governments. So what can governments do nowadays? Well, we are launching tomorrow, Phil, I believe. Orion is the United States NASA is launching Orion. It is a spacecraft that has been in development for quite some time. It's the first new launch vehicle since the space shuttle, which was launched when 1980. So that's it's exciting in that this is the vehicle that could take astronauts to asteroids and perhaps even to Mars. And
and they're saying back to the moon too, right?
Oh yes, and back to the moon as well. And in this particular launch, they're going to send Orion up and further out. Now without astronauts this time, it's going to be an empty capsule. But they're sending Orion further out than anything has gone since Apollo, and so it's going to be a long trip. And it's a very big craft. It looks like it looked like a dozen people could fit in this particular capsule, and the parachutes, Phil, that they have to release. There's two parachutes that come out at first to slow it some, and then the big parachutes come out. And the big parachutes would cover a football field. That's how the size of the parachutes it takes to slow this craft as it re-enters. And they're doing doing stuff on a big level again, and that's kind of exciting to see.
It is absolutely. I got up this morning. It was supposed to be this morning. They put it off tomorrow. I got up this morning to watch it on NASA TV, and it got delayed, and then finally it was within the window of when the kids get up. And it was just 6 minutes to launch. They had the countdown at 6 minutes, so it was a little early, but I got everybody up and I said, "Watch this biggest rocket we've blasted off in 30 years is going to take off, guys." And the countdown got down to about 2 minutes, and then they scrubbed it, and I was like, "Okay, guys, well now you've learned a really valuable lesson about spaceflight. This is what usually happens."
Exactly.
Let's have breakfast and get dressed.
They're like, "Oh, Dad."
Dad, when is the rocket going to? Nothing's happening. I'm like, well, there you go. It's an impressive looking machine, and it's a reminder that that capability to do big things has not gone away. We still have the capability. It's just a question of whether we're using it, and now we're using it a little bit. So I'm glad to see. I'm glad to see that coming back. But I really do believe that those arguments that we've stopped doing big things are would be kind of like saying that civilization peaked with ancient Egypt because we've really never made anything bigger than the pyramids, right? It's kind of at that level. It's like, well, no, that you're not counting everything that counts there. So I'm very psyched about the big things that we're going to make happen at a civilizational level, and the big things that individuals can make happen. I think I think there's a lot of future in both of those. Okay, so what else we got here? Let me throw another one out there. We did a show called Red Pill or Blue, and this was a discussion about virtual versus real reality, and asking the question, is it better to live in a virtual reality that gives you everything you want, or a real reality that maybe is pretty disappointing most of the time, but that is really real? So kind of a philosophical question, but couched in there, some real issues around, things I think people are going to be facing increasingly in the years to come. I think that that some of those issues are encroaching on us daily, and we don't see it happening. We're not in full immersive VR, so we don't think of it as virtual reality necessarily. But the amount of time we spend in the cyber world, and the amount of time we spend kind of in reality that we sort of, curb to our own preferences and desires, I think has increased, and technology definitely enables it. And I think this is a topic that we will come back to definitely as real virtual reality. Oculus Rift and other embryonic technologies really start to deliver on the promise of an immersive experience. This becomes a much bigger issue. But even with games today, even with video, even with porn, it is an issue now. And I think it's something that we're going to keep talking about.
I think something I may have mentioned in that show and bears mentioning again is that my thought that augmented reality will be more important than full virtual reality. Our ability to project the digital world onto the real world, whether it be using, Google Glass or something like that, is going to be it's going to be really, really important going forward. And more important even than checking completely out with, some sort of virtual experience like with an Oculus Rift or something is the ability to use the digital world to make of the real world what we want. And so, that's going to me, augmented reality even more important than virtual reality.
Yeah, and really it's another great example of one of those dichotomous things occurring. Just like you've got the Internet of Things happening at the same time that the world seems to be turning into data, here you have our ability to go into the cyber world growing exponentially. At the same time, our ability to kind of take the cyber world and project it out into the real world happening. It's like two sides of the same coin. For both of those things. And yeah, I think you're right. In the end, it could be that augmented reality, which allows us to function in the real world, and that brings all of that good stuff into the real world, probably ends up being bigger than the more, it's almost kind of solipsistic virtual reality, right? Which is
right.
which is shutting the so-called real world down in favor of in favor of a better experience. I don't know. I could see where it might go that way, but it's pretty wide open right now how it might end up. There's a lot of variables there. I'm looking forward to better augmented reality. Google
right.
Glass, I guess, ended up being kind of a disappointment.
Right.
It established what it needed to establish, but it's not the future. We're not all going to be wearing those, I don't think, are we?
No, it's going to have to be a lot more subtle than that. And but I think ultimately we'll go that direction. But before we put something on our face, it's going to have to look good. And that wasn't quite there yet.
Yeah,
kind of a false dawn. As we've seen a number of those. I mean, what was the first tablet that Apple put out back in the 90s?
The Apple Newton, are you thinking of?
Yeah, the Apple Newton. They poured huge money into that, a huge bet that just absolutely fell flat on its face. And Apple could very well have said, you know what, never again. We're not going to do tablets ever again. That was just. But when the technology was right, they did try again, and they with great success. So, I think. Who knows? In another 5 years, maybe Google will have try it again. And
we'll be buying glasses from Google, and we won't think anything of it. That's right. We'll think, hey,
that's right.
we love our glasses that we bought from Google.
We're going to call them Google goggles now.
Yeah, anyway. Or just Googles. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, one more I want to hit was from about one more before I get the big one. From about a year ago, the world's longest book. This is a topic that's going to become increasingly important, and this is a good opportunity for me to give an update on that. It's just taking a while. I'm sorry to get all the submissions into shape. It turns out I don't have as much time to edit a book as I thought I did, and you kind of want to get it right. There's been a lot of back and forth with some of the authors on some of the sections, but we're working on it, and that book is going to happen. It will happen sometime in the year 2015, and it's going to be very exciting. And now, come to think of it, this actually does answer the question about net new topics, because we're going to be talking about every idea that's in The World Transformed, the Abridged Edition, our world's longest book, our book of 99 great ideas submitted by our friends, mostly people who've been on this program. And a lot of those are ideas I never would have thought of, but that our friends have thought of, and we're going to have them on the show talking about those ideas. So there's at least 100 right there, Stephen. Great ideas that we hadn't necessarily
100
thought
shows
about.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah, 100 shows, exactly. There's our next 100 shows right there. It's that book. Come to think of it, here we've done 100. There's our next 100. Okay, let's have the music. We're done. but there's going to be some great stuff coming out of that, and we're looking forward to moving that project along a bit more quickly, I hope, in the weeks to come than it has over the past few months. That's going to be fun. Okay, so this takes me to kind of the big one, and I'm going to combine several show topics. I'm going to read several show titles here, and Stephen, you tell me if you can find the common thread. Okay.
Okay.
Did a show called The Shocking Truth. We did one, How Good Can It Get? We did one called The Joy Explosion. I'll just take those three. Okay. Do you see the thread there? Do you see the common thread between those shows?
Obviously, it's optimism that runs against conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
You ask the quote experts, how the future is going to go, and we tend to see the problems. The problems going forward jump out at us much faster than the ways in which things will be awesome, and so that's what we were emphasizing with that common thread, I believe. Is that what you're getting at, Phil?
Absolutely. That's what the shocking truth that we need to continually remind ourselves is that we've got it pretty good. That for most of us, we've got it better than humans have ever had it, by and large.
Right.
It's just the average human life right now on this planet is better than the average human life at any other time prior, in just by just about any measure that you can give it. That is the shocking truth. How good can it get? And the joy explosion, or just talking about, let's face that and let's move in that direction, right? let's start, assuming that's true. What can we do? What ought we to do? Because I think that in addition to the fact that we tend to be very cynical and very problem focused as a society, in not recognizing how well things are going, we just deprive ourselves of a certain level of happiness, I think, that we could have, that we've kind of have coming to us and we choose not to enjoy. But we also miss out on recognizing that we're probably in a better position to deal with the problems that we have than anyone's ever been to deal with the problems they have. That's the rest of it, is we don't recognize our advantages, and we don't recognize our growing capability, and we don't recognize the fact that, chances are we're going to do something about this. And if we don't, well, that's just dumb. We need to do that. We're in the position to do that. And I'm going to give a weird example, okay? I'm going to give kind of a, I don't know, this might be kind of offensive to people, and if it is, I can't help it. I'm not going to apologize because I think I'm right about this. I look at what's happened over the past couple of weeks with the terrible developments that have come out of Ferguson, Missouri, and this, this is a bad situation where a policeman killed an unarmed man. There was there was a grand jury investigation. They decided not to indict, and suddenly the whole town goes crazy. They burned 47 buildings down, or whatever it was that happened. It's just this huge mess. And then this week, where we have something seemingly in the same vein that occurs in New York, where a cop is holding a guy in a chokehold, and the guy dies, and no indictment. So there's all these societal issues, and we could obviously do hours and hours of shows if we were a show talking about these kinds of things, just talking about race, or just talking about excessive force by the police, and what's really involved, and white privilege, or assumptions of guilt, or whatever all those issues are. And no one says, what's the quickest way to fix this, right? How do we get this to stop happening? we did a show early on in the days of Fast Forward Radio, where one of the things I suggested was, we've really got to get past deadly force. We're civilized enough now. We've got Star Trek communicators. Why in the world don't we have the phasers that can stun yet?
Yeah.
Why do we still have a whole infrastructure built on the best you can do is give somebody something they'll kill somebody with, and chances are they're going to have to kill somebody. I read this stat that's the police kill 400, 500 people every year, without even getting into how many of those are justified. That's just a lot of people to be dying, right? It's just a lot of people to be to be being killed. And is it flippant? Is it just starry-eyed to say, well, maybe the solution here is that we need to have other ways of enforcing the law than people shooting people? That I want to see some technology that makes it possible to stop somebody as effectively as killing them without killing them. Right?
And I have to think, Phil, that technology is well within our reach, and can be had pretty quickly and without a whole lot of additional R&D. I'm going to tell you another thing that actually the president has suggested, and I'm very much in disagreement with a lot of the ways that this administration has handled this particular crisis. But that said, the suggestion that all police officers should have video cameras on their person at all times is absolutely excellent. I think that police officers absolutely should. I think that there should be dash cams in every unit. In fact, there need to be cams pointed in every direction in every unit. Plus, you need to have one on your person along with a microphone. I'm going to tell you that that would overnight it would change. If you're a bad cop, you're not a bad cop anymore. You can't afford to be. You can't.
Not for long.
No, not for long. You will be caught. It's everything. Every moment of every day that you spend professionally. Now, there's going to be some police unions that would be against this, but I want to tell you, if you're a police officer, you do not have a right to privacy.
Right.
You're a
you're a
public
public
servant.
official.
You're
performing a public duty. Absolutely. Yeah.
And every second that you're on duty should be a matter of public record. And you get that plus effective, non-lethal stopping power, whatever you want to call it. You combine those two things, and it would virtually stop. I think some of the tragedies that we see, and and I want to say something socially about this. That there's been some social advancements because this sort of thing were it to have happened 20 or 30 years ago, Phil. Did happen 20 or 30 years ago.
Sure.
It was there was not the same level of concern among all Americans as there would have been among, perhaps the minority segment. I think that there's concern among. That's. I don't think there's any American that's not living in a cave somewhere that hasn't heard about these things and is concerned about these things. It's not.
Right.
It's not cool that someone dies. Now does a white police officer have a right to arrest a black suspect? Yes, he does. But there's got to be ways,
and vice versa. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Am I going to question a black cop that stops me for speeding because of the matter of race? I better not. Number one, no, I won't. But number two, I better not. Just do that. But race relations could stand some improvement in both directions. But the fact that all Americans are concerned about this, I think, is something that we should be celebrating. And as far as some technological solutions, absolutely. That's,
yeah. Well, to me, the thing is, it's like, yeah, I'm not saying let's not work on all the other issues. You know, if cops are being brutal, or if people are being racist, or whatever, all of that stuff,
right.
Work on it. But you know what? It's like, even if you haven't fixed all that yet, and people aren't killing each other anymore, at least you've gotten rid of the people not killing each other. You know what I'm saying? It's like, in fact, right. the kind of technology I'm suggesting would probably lead to, unintended consequences. There would be this huge tsunami of people getting stunned, right? It would just be happening all the time. Cops would be stunning people all the time, and it would be horrible. But it's better than dying, It's not to just give a glib answer. I don't mean it that way, but it is to suggest that if we think outside the box a little bit, and if we look at how technology can improve our lives, and how doing things differently and looking at things differently can improve our lives, there might be fixes to problems. There might be an ability to move forward faster than we had given ourselves credit for before. Well, there it is, Stephen. We've managed to. What did we hit, about 5 of them? I don't know. I lumped 3 in there
right
at the end,
5.
so that really helped. Yeah. so that makes it 8. And okay, do you have any other new ones? Any other parting shots, new ideas that we'll talk about in the next 100 shows?
I wanted to mention, and will now, the antikythera mechanism from way back in ancient Greece, right? They're calling it now. It's 300 years older than they thought it was. They thought it was 1,500 years old, and now they're calling it 1,800 years old.
Oh, that's
basing that on the fact that they figured out the starting calendar that was actually part of the mechanism, and they can so they. They can figure out, well, okay, it included within the mechanism a solar eclipse that was 300 BC, and so they believe that the starting point of that particular mechanism, it was already a couple hundred years old when it went down with that ship, that particular mechanism. Wow. And so, what's my point with this? Well, amazing technology from way back when. Why wasn't it everywhere? There was a tendency, I believe, of advanced knowledge being relegated to guilds. That is not the issue these days. Knowledge is exploding in every direction, and so if I have an idea, it ends up being shared and picked up by people that understand aspects of my idea better than I do, and work on it in this way and that way, and it gets carried on and and becomes something I didn't even foresee. That's kind of an exciting thing. There was a chance for us as a species to have taken off with an information age much earlier than we did, but it kind of got stifled. And does anyone think that we can put the genie back in the bottle at this point? No, it's not. It's been too much of an explosion in knowledge to go back now. So, I just comparing and contrasting the world of that time with our world today.
Very encouraging thought that we've made that much progress, and yet still have so much farther to go. Stephen, what is our music tonight?
Our music tonight is So Many Things by special guests.
Well, perfect topic once again. So many things to talk about in the next 100 shows. We hope you will be with us for all of those programs. And until next time, live to see it.
Sarah figured out that by switching to Metro PCS, she gets 2 free smartphones.
Your barbecue rib?
Rest home with you, Sarah.
Just like she figured out that by visiting her in-laws, she doesn't have to cook for the rest of the week. You too figure it out. Get 2 free 4G LTE smartphones from top brands like Samsung and LG after instant rebate when you switch. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figure it out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included. See store or metropcs.com for details and terms and conditions.
Support for this podcast comes from the Utah Office of Tourism, announcing the Four Corners Schools Canyon Country Discovery Center, offering hands-on exhibits, educational tours, and a variety of field-based hiking and rafting adventures. From day trips to week-long adventures throughout the Colorado Plateau, nearby attractions include Canyonlands National Park, Hovenweep National Monument, Natural Bridges National Monument, Monument Valley Tribal